somebody from the audience have a question, we could try to answer them. Yes. Okay.
I have a question to the astronomer. What was the size and the distance of the planet you showed with the covered star?
So that's the planet itself is about 5 times the mass of Jupiter. Okay, the distance is very small. It's only 5 astronomical units, so it's only 5 times as far as the Earth is from the Sun, from the star.
Another question over there. Well, yeah, go ahead. Can you speak louder? Yeah, please.
More interesting is whether you can replicate sentience, whether you can replicate sentience, the subjective aspects of, our mind, I guess you could say. Do you see those two things as one and the same? Do you think we'll ever replicate sentience? And if so, should we?
Yeah, that's, of course, an important question. I can ask a question back to you. How do we know whether we'll be able to replicate? This is the essence of the Turing test. I think it's not a very satisfactory definition of intelligence, but in a sense is what has served as a definition of intelligence for the field of artificial intelligence. The Turing test is this kind of imitation game proposed by Alan Turing in 1952 or so. It's, I think, the 100th anniversary next week of the birth of Alan Turing. And the imitation game is you put something in a room, connect to it a teletype at a time, and you as a person has to decide after a discussion of a few minutes with the computer, this is what Turing suggested, whether in the room there is a computer or a person. So a number of computer systems have managed to pass this test in narrow domains. It's easy for a computer to fake being a psychotherapist. I think it's easy to fake being a financial advisor and so on, an economist. But, I think some of the jobs to think are probably most easy for us, like being a gardener or a butler or a cook, I think are still unreachable by a computer or a robot. And I think in general, being able to imitate all aspects of human intelligence is something I don't know how, not even in terms of a project for the future, how it could be done. That's the challenge that requires basic research, and certainly more than a few decades of it.
I have a question for Batsheva. To connect neuroscience and genetics, what do you think is the connection between, considering that the human intelligence is included into the genome? So, without offense for Tommaso, but maybe the secret of human intelligence would reside in decoding the DNA. So what's your hint in that?
Thank you for suggesting it. Yes, from my point of view, I do think that most of what we are talking about is encoded in the genes, although it's very dramatically affected by the environment. So it's an interaction between genes and the environment. And we have many discussions in our institute between neuroscientists and geneticists trying to convince the neuroscientists that they should look for genetic basis of some of the features that they are looking into it, and I think that this will be part of the future. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is directed for Jeffrey. With the shutting down of the NASA space program, do you think that there will still be a lot? I mean, it's obviously a very sad thing, but do you think that the amount of private space flights will make up for it? And just what are your thoughts on the NASA space program
let me just clear it up. The NASA has not shut down its space program. It's unfortunate, I think, that when the shuttle stopped flying, the way the media treated it led a lot of people to believe that NASA was stopping spaceflight, period. NASA no longer has a rocket to launch people into space, and we are getting rides on a Russian rocket. It's not the first time that the US has not had a way to put people into space. After the Apollo program was ended, that was in the 70s, and it wasn't until 1981 that the shuttle stopped flying. We still have the International Space Station, we still have people going up into space, but basically, getting people into orbit around the Earth is no longer cutting-edge technology. We've been doing it now for 50 years. We know how to do it. And by the way, NASA never built its own rockets. They were always built by private industry on contract to NASA, and that's the only difference. Look at what's happening now is a change in the way we're contracting the services. The idea is that if private industry will provide the services, NASA will buy those flights into low Earth orbit. I think the big economic question is whether there will turn out to be enough other customers besides NASA to make this a viable economic activity. And that's still something that won't be answered until a few years from now. NASA is building a new large rocket on the scale of the old Saturn V, because what NASA would like to concentrate on is not what we hope will become relatively routine trips back and forth to low Earth orbit, but to once again renew the quest of exploring the solar system and going beyond the Earth, back to the moon, visits to asteroids, someday to Mars. That's what true exploration is really about, and that's really what I'd like to see NASA be devoting its human spaceflight resources to, not just getting people into low Earth orbit.
One more question? One more difficult question, I'm afraid. I'm interested in if anybody on your panel can identify what is the definition of life, and when does a machine fall into the category of being alive?
I cannot answer your question, but I answer another question, which is related to yours. I have been discussing many times with my colleagues about whether computers will ever be, able to do what we humans do. And I had invented a criterion. The criterion is we will know that the computer does what we do when, after some interaction with the computer says, I need a break, let's have a cup of coffee.